Have you ever felt it? That strange, persistent, almost nagging sensation that even when surrounded by the cacophony of modern life, amidst its dazzling achievements and the endless scroll of digital connection, something vital, something essential, is profoundly missing. You stand in what advertising brochures and societal narratives paint as the promised land, a world offering limitless choices, instant information, 1,000 curated selves vying for your fleeting attention. Yet, within the gilded halls of this contemporary existence, an echo of emptiness often resonates, a quiet hum of existential disorientation. What if the very fabric of this reality, the one we're so fervently encouraged to embrace, is itself an elaborate illusion? A beautifully constructed, yet ultimately constricting, gilded cage. A system meticulously designed, not necessarily by a shadowy cabal, but by the collective momentum of societal norms, cultural inheritances, and our own unexamined desires, all conspiring to keep us from one singular, invaluable treasure, our own, unique, unshakable, and authentic, true self. Welcome, then, to the labyrinth of the self. It is not a mythical place in a forgotten tale, but the very landscape of our inner lives, a psychic terrain we all inhabit, whether we consciously acknowledge it or not. Imagine a vast, ever-shifting maze, its corridors lined with the glittering mirrors of social expectation, its dead ends paved with the cobblestones of internalized shoulds, and its pathways haunted by the seductive whispers of 1,000 false gurus promising quick fixes and effortless enlightenment. Each turn seems to offer a new promise, a new identity to try on, a new distraction from the deeper call. All these elements, in their dazzling complexity, often serve one unconscious purpose: to divert us, to confuse us, to keep us wandering, and ultimately, to prevent us from reaching the quiet, luminous center where our true self resides. Today, we are not just casual tourists in this labyrinth. We are embarking on a deliberate conscious journey. It will be a dangerous journey, for it requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths and to shed comforting illusions. But it will also be an immensely liberating one, for its ultimate destination is nothing less than our own most authenticity. Our guide on this expedition is one of the 20th century's most profound explorers of the human psyche, Carl Jung. With his wisdom as our compass, we will not merely map the treacherous twists and turns of this inner maze. We will gather the courage to navigate its darkest, most forgotten passages, to confront the often frightening guardians that protect its secrets, and ultimately, to discover, or perhaps rediscover, the golden thread of our own being that leads us back, not to a place of childish innocence, but to a state of integrated wholeness, to the self we were always, truly, meant to be. The question is not whether you are capable of this journey, but whether you are willing to take that first, often daunting step. Are you ready to stop wandering aimlessly through the echoing halls of illusion and begin the purposeful search for your authentic path? Our journey into this intricate labyrinth necessarily begins with an examination of its outermost layer, the very first illusion we encounter, the one most of us wear so consistently, so comfortably, that we often forget it is a construct, a carefully assembled facade, the mask. Carl Jung, in his meticulous cartography of the psyche, termed this social interface the persona. Think of the persona as your public face, the meticulously curated identity you present to the world. It's the sum total of all the roles you consciously and unconsciously play to navigate the complex theater of social life. The diligent and capable employee, the supportive and understanding friend, the sophisticated and witty urbanite, the rebellious and unconventional artist, the caring and responsible parent, the good son or daughter. It's the version of you that is designed to gain acceptance, to earn accolades, to solicit likes and approval, to win promotions, to secure a place within the tribe. It is, in essence, your psychological wardrobe, from which you select the appropriate attire for each social occasion. Now, Jung was very clear. In itself, the persona is not a villain. It is not inherently pathological. In fact, It is a necessary and vital tool for social adaptation. It allows us to interact with others in a relatively smooth and predictable manner, to function effectively within societal structures, to connect, to cooperate, and to belong. Without a functioning persona, we would be overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of social demands, or we might inadvertently expose too much of our raw, unmediated inner world, leading to misunderstanding, rejection, or even harm. A flexible, well-adapted persona is a sign of psychological health. The labyrinth, however, begins to take on a more sinister aspect when, as Jung warned repeatedly, we fall into the trap of over-identifying with this mask. The danger arises when the persona ceases to be a flexible tool and instead becomes a rigid, all-encompassing identity. When the shoulds and oughts dictated by our various roles, by the overt and covert expectations of our family, our profession, our culture, and what Jung termed the collective unconscious, those deeply embedded, often unspoken, shared archetypal patterns, cultural norms, and societal beliefs, begin to systematically silence and eventually drown out the quiet, persistent, authentic voice of our true self. At this juncture, your life ceases to be an expression of your authentic desires, your unique talents, or your individual potential. Instead, it transforms into a performance, a relentless striving to live up to an externally imposed or internally adopted checklist of shoulds. I should climb the corporate ladder even if this job feels soul-crushing. I should maintain this long-term relationship even if it has become a source of constant pain and resentment. I should always appear cheerful and strong even when I am crumbling inside from anxiety or grief. I should have a perfect home, a perfect family, a perfect body, as portrayed on 1,000 Instagram feeds. Does any of this sound achingly familiar? When the persona becomes a prison, its walls built from these internalized shoulds, a profound schism occurs within the psyche. A creeping, pervasive sense of inauthenticity begins to permeate your experience. You might achieve all the external markers of success as defined by your society, yet feel like an imposter in your own life story, a stranger to yourself. That initial gnawing emptiness we spoke of, that subtle hum of existential disquiet. It very often finds its roots right here, in the ever-widening chasm between the polished, socially acceptable persona we project to the world and the neglected, often yearning true self, hidden deep within. It is crucial to understand that this is not merely a sign of personal failing or individual weakness. It is a fundamental human challenge, a psychic predicament that has been uniquely amplified and complicated in our hyper-connected, image-obsessed, and rapidly changing modern world. The labyrinth of illusions beckons with ever more seductive promises. Wear this mask, follow this trend, adopt this lifestyle, achieve this status, and you will find acceptance, validation, love, and success. But these paths, as Jung's work so powerfully illuminates, often lead us further and further away from our own authentic center, deeper into the maze of a life lived for others, or for an idealized, unattainable image of who we think we should be. Therefore, the very first courageous step in navigating this intricate labyrinth of the self is an act of radical self-awareness, a conscious decision to begin questioning the masks you wear. Which aspects of your public self, your daily performance, feel genuinely, vibrantly you, and which parts feel like a well-rehearsed, perhaps even exhausting charade? What specific shoulds are you currently living by? Take a moment, perhaps even pause now, and try to list 3 of them. Now, ask yourself, who truly wrote the script for these shoulds? Was it you, or was it your parents, your teachers, your peers, your culture, the media? This initial confrontation, this abed peeling back of the carefully constructed layers of the persona, can be profoundly uncomfortable, even disorienting. It might feel like a betrayal of everything you've known, or a frightening step into the unknown. But it is the absolutely necessary entryway into the deeper, more challenging, and ultimately far more rewarding passages of the inner labyrinth, for it is in these dimly lit, often unvisited corridors of our own psyche that we inevitably encounter the first great and often misunderstood guardian of our true self, the formidable and profoundly powerful shadow. And understanding, truly understanding our shadow, as we will explore in the next part of our journey, is not about preparing for a battle against some internal monster. It is, paradoxically, about the courageous act of reclaiming a lost, disowned, and incredibly potent fragment of our own soul. A fragment that holds the very keys to our wholeness and our most authentic. In the first part of our journey into the labyrinth of the self, we began to peel back the layers of the persona, that polished, socially acceptable mask we present to the world. We recognized how an over-identification with this external facade, a life lived according to a script of shoulds, can lead to a profound disconnect from our true self, leaving us with a haunting sense of emptiness, even amidst apparent success. But the path to authenticity, as Carl Jung illuminated, requires more than just questioning our masks. It demands a courageous descent into the deeper, often more unsettling regions of our own psyche. It calls us to confront the first great guardian of the labyrinth's inner sanctum, a figure often misunderstood, frequently feared, yet holding keys to unimaginable power, the shadow. Imagine, if you will, that the persona is the brightly lit, well-manicured courtyard of your psychic castle. It's where you receive guests, conduct your public affairs, and present your most acceptable face. But every castle has its dungeons, its hidden cellars, its forgotten attics, places where unwanted things are stored, where inconvenient truths are locked away. This, in essence, is the realm of the shadow. What then constitutes this shadow that Jung spoke of with such gravity and profound insight? It is, fundamentally, everything within ourselves that we have, consciously or unconsciously, deemed unacceptable, unlovable, inferior, or bad. These are the aspects of our multifaceted being that, at some point in our developmental journey, often beginning in early childhood, were met with disapproval, shame, punishment, ridicule, or simply a consistent lack of understanding or validation from our primary caregivers, our family, our peer group, or the broader cultural milieu. To survive within these formative environments, to maintain a sense of belonging, to secure love and approval, or simply to avoid pain, we learned, with the remarkable adaptability of a child, to repress these undesirable traits. We pushed them down, denied their existence, or split them off from our conscious self-image, relegating them to the unlit, often unvisited, recesses of our unconscious mind. The shadow, therefore, becomes the psychic container for our disowned desires, those impulses, passions, and longings that didn't align with the good, moral, or proper image we were explicitly or implicitly encouraged to cultivate. It houses our so-called negative or difficult emotions. The raw anger we were told was impolite or destructive, the gnawing envy that was deemed shameful or petty, the ambitious greed that was considered unspiritual or selfish, the paralyzing fear that was labeled as weakness or cowardice. It contains our deepest insecurities, our most painful perceived inadequacies, our primitive or instinctual reactions that felt too raw, too untamed, too wild for the decorum of polite society, or the carefully constructed image of our conscious ego. But here we must pause and absorb a crucial, often overlooked point that radically shifts our understanding of the shadow. It is not solely a repository for negativity or what we perceive as our dark side. Paradoxically and profoundly, the shadow can also hold our unexpressed, undeveloped, or socially inconvenient talents. It can be the hiding place for our hidden strengths, those capacities that we were taught to downplay or fear. It can contain our dormant creativity, our unique artistic visions, our unconventional ways of thinking that didn't fit the established molds. It can even hold our capacity for profound joy, uninhibited playfulness, and authentic, untamed power, especially if these vibrant qualities, for whatever complex reasons, were deemed too much, inappropriate, unrealistic, or unseemly by our persona, or by the influential figures and systems in our early environment. Perhaps your natural assertiveness, was consistently labeled as bossy or aggressive, so you learn to suppress it, and it now resides in your shadow as a frustrated, perhaps passive-aggressive energy. Perhaps your profound sensitivity and empathy were dismissed as being too emotional or weak, leading you to build a hardened persona, while your true capacity for deep connection lies dormant in the shadow. Or maybe your unique creative spark, your unconventional ideas, were met with ridicule or indifference, so you learn to hide that light under a bushel of conformity, its potential energy now part of your shadow's unexplored territory. It is absolutely vital, therefore, to understand that we all possess a shadow. It is not a sign of pathology or moral failing. It is an inescapable, archetypal component of the human psyche, as natural and as necessary to our wholeness as our conscious ego. The critical mistake, the one that transforms the shadow from a potential source of profound self-knowledge and integrated power into a disruptive, often destructive, internal force, lies not in having a shadow. It lies in denying its existence, in refusing to acknowledge its presence, its messages, and its undeniable influence on our lives. Because, as Carl Jung so profoundly understood and articulated, what we refuse to confront within ourselves, what we consistently and forcefully push into the darkness of our unconscious, doesn't simply wither away and conveniently disappear. On the contrary, it gains an autonomous, often subversive and highly charged power. It festers in the dark, like a neglected wound that inevitably becomes infected, spreading its toxins throughout our entire psychic system. And it will find myriad, often highly symbolic and indirect, ways to control us, to influence our thoughts, our feelings, our choices, our dreams, and our relationships, all from behind the well-guarded, often heavily fortified, scenes of our conscious awareness. The more we deny it, the more we try to pretend it isn't there, the denser, more formidable, and more prone to erupt in unexpected and destructive ways it becomes. The shadow, unacknowledged, becomes a hidden saboteur, a puppet master pulling strings we don't even realize are attached. How, then, does this unacknowledged and therefore untamed shadow typically manifest in our daily lives, in our interactions with the world, and in our relationship with ourselves? One of its most common, pervasive, and often insidious operations is through the psychological mechanism Jung termed projection. When we are unable or unwilling to see, accept, and consciously integrate a certain quality, trait, or emotion within ourselves, we have a powerful unconscious tendency to project it outwards, to attribute it to other people, groups, or even inanimate objects in our environment. Suddenly, they become the carriers, the living embodiments, of our own disowned psychic material. That colleague whose ambition and relentless drive absolutely infuriates you, prompting you to label them as ruthless, narcissistic, or power-hungry. Could it be, Jung might gently inquire, a direct reflection of your own disowned and perhaps envied ambition, an ambition that your persona, perhaps one meticulously built around an image of being humble, self-effacing, or non-competitive, has deemed utterly unacceptable, even shameful? That particular public figure whose perceived arrogance or hypocrisy elicits a disproportionately vehement reaction from you. Is it possible that they are merely a convenience screen upon which you are projecting your own unacknowledged tendencies toward self-importance or your own internal inconsistencies? That friend whose uninhibited emotional expressiveness or profound vulnerability makes you deeply uncomfortable, prompting you to dismiss them inwardly as weak, overdramatic, or attention-seeking? Could it be that this mirrors a capacity for deep feeling, a tenderness, a vulnerability within you that you learned, perhaps very early in life, to suppress, devalue, and armor against in order to appear strong, rational, or in control? Carl Jung's famous and often quoted dictum, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves," is a direct and powerful pointer to this ubiquitous phenomenon of shadow projection. Our shadow, when compulsively and unconsciously projected, transforms the world around us into a vast, often painful, and confusing gallery of our own disowned and unintegrated parts. We end up endlessly battling our own reflections in others, wasting immense amounts of psychic energy on external conflicts, judgments, and resentments that are, at their very core, deeply internal and unresolved conflicts within our own psyche. We point a finger at the world, unaware that three fingers are pointing back at ourselves. Beyond the realm of projection, an unacknowledged and therefore untamed shadow can be a primary, often hidden, engine of self-sabotage. This is where the labyrinth becomes particularly treacherous, as we become our own minotaur, unconsciously blocking our own path to fulfillment. Why do we find ourselves inexplicably procrastinating on the very dreams, goals, and creative projects that our conscious mind cherishes most dearly? Why do we consistently repeat the same destructive patterns in our intimate relationships, almost as if drawn by an invisible force towards partners or situations that seem destined to wound us in familiar, predictable ways? Why do we freeze, falter, or make uncharacteristic errors just when a significant breakthrough, a moment of genuine success or happiness, is finally within our grasp? Often these are the subtle and not-so-subtle machinations of our unintegrated shadow. It might be acting out its repressed needs for attention, rebellion, or even a perverse form of comfort in familiar suffering in ways that directly undermine our conscious intentions and aspirations. It might be driven by a deep-seated, often unconscious, fear of success, a fear that stepping into our full potential would make us too visible, too vulnerable to criticism or envy, or would betray some old, unexamined loyalty to a past self or a dysfunctional family system. The shadow can manifest as that relentless, hypercritical inner voice, that insidious current of doubt and self-deprecation that whispers, "You're not truly good enough. You don't really deserve this happiness. You'll only mess it up eventually, so why even try?" It can be the source of those sudden, irrational impulses to run away, to pick a fight, to numb ourselves with distractions, precisely when things get too real, too intimate, too demanding of our authentic presence and our courageous engagement with life. The pervasive pressures of the modern world, with its relentless emphasis on presenting a perfect, flawless, perpetually positive and highly curated persona, only serve to exacerbate this already complex shadow dynamic. The more polished and idealized our public image, the darker, denser, and more dangerously neglected our shadow aspects can become. Social media platforms in particular can function as vast, echoing arenas for collective shadow projection. Online outrage, performative virtue signaling, and the vicious, often anonymous, judgment of others frequently serve as convenient, socially sanctioned masks for our own unacknowledged insecurities, our hidden envies, our unlived lives, and our collective anxieties. We project our collective darkness onto public figures, onto opposing political or social groups, onto anyone who dares to deviate from the ever-shifting prescribed norms, rarely pausing to engage in the uncomfortable but necessary introspection that might reveal what these intense reactions truly signify about our own hidden inner landscapes. But here, as we stand at this crucial juncture in the labyrinth of the self, facing the often frightening visage of our own shadow, lies the radical, paradoxical, and profoundly liberating truth that Carl Jung tirelessly offered to us. The shadow is not ultimately our enemy to be vanquished, nor a monster to be slain and dismembered. It is, in fact, a vital, indispensable, and often misunderstood part of our sacred journey towards wholeness. It holds immense, frequently untapped, reserves of psychic energy, raw creativity, untamed vitality, and the very essence of our deepest authenticity. Jung often likened the shadow to a locked treasure chest, or a dragon guarding a hoard of gold. Yes, approaching it, attempting to unlock it, or to understand the dragon, might initially reveal some frightening, challenging, or uncomfortable contents. The spiders of our past fears, the dust of our long neglects, the sharp edges of our unhealed wounds. But hidden beneath these more challenging elements, or perhaps intrinsically interwoven with them, lies the invaluable gold of our unlived potential, our untamed and authentic power, our deepest, most inconvenient, yet most essential and life-giving truths. The alchemists of old knew this. In stercor invenitur. In filth, it will be found. The treasure often lies where we least want to look. The true journey through the labyrinth of the self, therefore, when it comes to the shadow, is not about an epic battle aimed at its eradication. It is about cultivating the immense courage to turn and face it, to meet it not with condemnation, but with consciousness, not with fear, but with curiosity, not with rejection, but with a profound willingness to understand its messages and its purpose. It is not about conquering the shadow, but about the much more challenging and infinitely more rewarding alchemical process of integrating it. This means consciously, patiently, and compassionately acknowledging these disowned, often fragmented parts of ourselves. It involves a commitment to patiently exploring their origins, understanding their underlying and often legitimate, though perhaps misguided needs, and recognizing their often desperate attempts to be seen, heard, and valued. And then, crucially, it requires us to find healthy, constructive, and creative ways to express their underlying energies, to integrate their often surprising wisdom, and to channel their raw power into our conscious lives in a way that serves our overall wholeness and our authentic path. Your repressed anger, for instance, once it is met with understanding rather than further suppression, might transform into a powerful and articulate capacity for setting healthy boundaries, for speaking truth to power, for fighting for justice, and for what you truly believe in. Your deep-seated fear of failure, when faced with courage and self-compassion, might reveal a profound and passionate desire to create something truly meaningful and unique in the world. And in that confrontation, you might discover the very energy and resilience needed to pursue that desire despite the risks. Your so-called shameful sensitivity, once owned and honored, could blossom into the source of profound empathy, intuitive insight, artistic expression, and deep, meaningful connection with others and with the world around you. This profound process of shadow work, as it has come to be known in Jungian and depth psychology circles, is undoubtedly challenging. It is not a quick fix, nor a comfortable pastime. It demands a level of brutal self-honesty that can be, at times, deeply unsettling and even painful. It requires a sustained willingness to sit with discomfort, to tolerate ambiguity, to withdraw some of those compulsive and energy-draining projections from others, and to courageously own these darker, less socially acceptable aspects as integral, valuable parts of our multifaceted and wonderfully complex humanity. But it is precisely through this courageous confrontation, this compassionate curiosity, and this conscious ongoing process of integration that we begin to truly reclaim our lost power, to heal our most painful inner splits, and to move steadily and surely towards a more authentic, a more vibrant, a more resilient, and a more holistically integrated self. It's how we stop being haunted, limited, and secretly sabotaged by our own disowned parts, and, instead, begin to consciously harness their profound wisdom, their formidable energy, and their unique contribution to our individual journey of becoming whole. The shadow, then, is not just a fearsome guardian of the labyrinth that must be overcome or bypassed. It is itself a hidden, often overgrown passage, a challenging but absolutely essential part of the true path that leads to the center. And as we learn to walk this particular path with greater awareness, with more courage, and with deeper self-compassion, we find that the unconscious itself, that vast and mysterious inner world, begins to offer us other, more subtle and often surprisingly beautiful forms of guidance, the cryptic yet profoundly illuminating language of our dreams, and the strange, often startlingly meaningful coincidences that Carl Jung so aptly and poetically termed synchronicity. These will be the guiding stars and hidden maps for our exploration as we venture further into the heart of the labyrinth in the next part of our journey. We have ventured into the labyrinth of the self, first by examining the social masks of the persona that shape our external lives, and then by courageously descending into the often feared realm of the shadow, acknowledging those disowned parts of ourselves that hold surprising power and keys to our wholeness. This journey inwards is demanding, requiring us to confront illusions and integrate uncomfortable truths. But as we stand at this deeper threshold, Having begun the work of self-awareness, a crucial question arises. How do we navigate from here? How do we find our way through the labyrinth's more intricate, subtle, and often bewildering passages towards the authentic center of our being? Carl Jung, our steadfast guide, believed that the psyche possesses an inherent wisdom, a natural inclination towards healing and wholeness, much like a plant instinctively grows towards sunlight. This wisdom, he proposed, resides largely within the unconscious, that vast, mysterious, and largely unknown territory of our psyche that lies beyond the narrow beam of our everyday conscious awareness. The unconscious is not merely a chaotic dumping ground for repressed memories and primitive instincts, as some earlier psychological models suggested. For Jung, it is also an immense reservoir of creativity, intuitive insight, archetypal patterns, and a profound, often untapped intelligence that can guide us on our path of individuation, if only we learn to listen to its unique language. But how does the unconscious speak to us? It rarely uses the direct, logical, linear language of our conscious, rational mind. Instead, it communicates through a more ancient, symbolic, and often metaphorical vernacular. Two of its most powerful and consistently accessible languages, Jung taught, are our dreams and the strange, often startling phenomenon he termed synchronicity. These, along with the guiding, or sometimes misleading influence of our inner contrasexual archetypes, the anima in men and the animus in women, can serve as Ariadne's thread, helping us to navigate the labyrinth with greater clarity and purpose. Let us first turn to the world of dreams. Every night, as our conscious ego relinquishes its tight grip on reality, we descend into a realm where logic bends, time warps, and the impossible becomes commonplace. Jung considered dreams to be direct, unvarnished, and incredibly valuable communications from the unconscious. He saw them as nightly letters from the self, offering us candid insights into our current psychological state, our hidden conflicts, our neglected potentials, and even pointing towards a path of healing, compensation for our conscious one-sidedness, and progression towards wholeness. Unlike Freud, who often interpreted dreams primarily as wish fulfillments, TV as disguised sexual or aggressive impulses, Jung took a broader, more teleological view. He believed dreams were not just looking backward to past traumas, but also forward, attempting to guide the dreamer towards future development and a more balanced psychic life. They reveal to us where we are stuck, what aspects of ourselves we are ignoring, and what inner resources we might need to cultivate. Learning to pay attention to our dreams, therefore, becomes a crucial skill in navigating the labyrinth of the self. This doesn't necessarily mean becoming an expert dream interpreter, armed with a dictionary of universal symbols. For Jung, dream symbols are deeply personal, and their meaning can only be truly understood in the context of the individual dreamer's life and associations. Rather, it means cultivating an attitude of respectful curiosity towards our dream life. It means taking the time to record our dreams upon waking, even if they seem fragmented or bizarre. It means sitting with their imagery, their feelings, their narratives, without immediately trying to force them into a neat, rational explanation. What emotions did the dream evoke? Are there recurring characters, settings, or themes? Does the dream present a situation that is starkly different from, or perhaps compensatory to, your conscious, waking attitude? By engaging with our dreams in this patient, reflective way, we open up a rich, ongoing dialogue with the deeper, wiser parts of ourselves. The unconscious, through our dreams, might be showing us a neglected shadow aspect that needs attention, an undeveloped part of our persona that is causing us to feel inauthentic, or an archetypal energy that is trying to break through into our conscious life to offer its unique gifts. The images might be strange, the narratives illogical, but the underlying messages, when approached with an open heart and a discerning mind, can be profoundly illuminating. Then, there is the equally fascinating and often perplexing phenomenon of synchronicity. Jung coined this term to describe a meaningful coincidence, the acausal, non-causal alignment of an inner psychic event, such as a thought, a dream, a strong feeling, or an intuitive hunch. with an outer, objective event in the external world, in a way that feels too significant, too improbable, too personally relevant, to be dismissed as mere chance or random occurrence. Have you ever been thinking intensely about an old, long-lost friend, and then, out of the blue, they call you, or you bump into them on the street? Or perhaps you've been grappling with a specific life problem, and then you randomly open a book to a page that contains the exact insight or answer you were so desperately seeking. Or maybe a particular animal, number, or symbol keeps appearing in your life in unusual and repeated ways, just as you are pondering a major life decision related to what that symbol might represent for you. These are potential examples of synchronicity. For Jung, these were not just delightful quirks of fate or products of a mind seeking patterns where none exist. He saw synchronicities as potent indications that we are, at certain moments, deeply aligned with a larger underlying order in the universe, and a causal connecting principle he sometimes referred to as the unus mundus, one world. They are moments when the veil between our inner world and the outer world seems to become momentarily transparent, revealing a hidden coherence and a sense of guidance. Paying keen attention to these synchronicities, noting them down, reflecting on their possible meaning in the context of our current life situation and inner state, can be like finding Ariadne's golden thread in the most unexpected corners of the labyrinth. Synchronicity doesn't provide you with a complete detailed map of the entire maze, nor does it offer a guaranteed, step-by-step instruction manual. But it can offer vital clues, subtle nudges, timely affirmations, or sometimes even stark warnings, suggesting that you are on a path that has profound personal meaning and a connection to a larger pattern, even if you cannot yet see the ultimate destination or fully comprehend the grand design. It's the universe, or perhaps your own deepest self, winking at you, letting you know you're not alone, and that there are forces podderski your journey towards wholeness. Within this rich and often mysterious inner landscape of the unconscious, Jung also identified powerful gendered archetypal energies that play a crucial role in our psychological development and our navigation of the labyrinth. These are particularly significant in how we relate to the other, both within ourselves and in our external relationships. For a man, a key archetypal figure in his unconscious is the anima, the personification of all the feminine psychological tendencies in his psyche. His capacity for relatedness, his emotional life, his intuition, his connection to nature, his creativity, and his sense of soul. For a woman, the corresponding figure is the animus, the personification of the masculine psychological tendencies within her unconscious, her capacity for logic and reason, her assertiveness and agency, her connection to meaning and spirit, and her ability to act decisively in the world. It is crucial to understand that these are not simply about conforming to outdated gender stereotypes or societal roles. The anima and animus, in Jung's view, represent universal, archetypal principles of the feminine and masculine that exist within every individual, regardless of their biological sex or gender identity. They are about inner balance and the integration of these complementary energies. When we are largely unconscious of these potent inner figures, we tend to project them, often with considerable idealization or intense frustration, onto the people in our outer lives, particularly our romantic partners. A man might endlessly search for his perfect woman, his soulmate, projecting his undeveloped idealized anima onto one partner after another, only to be repeatedly disappointed when she inevitably fails to live up to his unconscious expectations. He might be drawn to women who embody the qualities his own anima lacks, or he might be irritated by women who express the very anima traits he has repressed in himself. Similarly, a woman might struggle with her animus. If it is undeveloped or negative, she might find herself constantly battling feelings of powerlessness, or she might express her masculine energy in a harsh, critical, or overly opinionated way, what Jung sometimes called a negative animus. She might project her ideal animus onto powerful or intellectual men, seeking external validation for her own thoughts and ideas. Or she might be in a constant, frustrating battle with men who seem to embody the very animus qualities she finds difficult to integrate within her. But when we begin the conscious work of withdrawing these projections, of recognizing and relating to our own inner anima or animus as an internal reality, these archetypal figures can transform from sources of relational turmoil and inner conflict into invaluable allies and guides on our journey through the labyrinth. A man who consciously engages with his anima, who learns to value his own capacity for feeling, intuition, and relatedness, finds that she can connect him to his emotional depth, unlock his creativity, guide him in his relationships with a new sensitivity, and provide a bridge to the deeper layers of his soul. She ceases to be a vague longing projected outwards and becomes an inner wellspring of wisdom and inspiration. A woman who consciously integrates her animus, who learns to own her intellectual power, her assertiveness, and her capacity for focused action, finds that he can give her access to her inner strength, her clarity of thought, her ability to articulate her truth, and the courage to act decisively in the world in pursuit of her goals and values. He ceases to be a source of inner argument or external conflict and becomes an inner partner, providing structure, discernment, and a connection to a world of meaning. This ongoing dynamic engagement with the guiding and sometimes trickster-like energies of the unconscious, by listening attentively to our dreams, by noticing and reflecting upon the synchronicities in our lives, and by consciously relating to and integrating our inner anima or animus, is not about finding easy, pre-packaged answers or a foolproof escape route from the complexities of life. It is about cultivating a profound, lifelong relationship with the vast, often non-rational intelligence of our own psyche. It's about learning to trust the subtle cues, the symbolic language, the intuitive nudges that can consistently lead us towards our unique true path, even, and perhaps especially, when the way forward seems most obscure, most challenging, or most shrouded in the mists of the unknown. But what, ultimately, is this true path? What is the fundamental aim of this arduous, often bewildering, yet profoundly rewarding journey through the labyrinth of the self? In our final part, we will explore Jung's culminating concept of individuation, the courageous lifelong process of emerging from the illusions of the collective and the entanglements of our unintegrated psyche into a life of authentic survival, profound personal meaning, and integrated resilient wholeness. We have journeyed deep into the labyrinth of the self. We've confronted the seductive illusions of the persona, the socially conditioned masks that can obscure our true nature. We've dared to venture into the shadowed corridors of our unconscious, acknowledging the denied and repressed aspects of our psyche, the shadow, and recognizing its hidden power and potential for integration. We've learned to listen for the subtle guidance of the unconscious, through the symbolic language of dreams, the meaningful coincidences of synchronicity, and the often challenging but ultimately balancing influence of our inner anima or animus. Now, as we approach what feels like the heart of this intricate maze, we must ask, what is the ultimate purpose of this arduous, often bewildering, yet profoundly rewarding inner expedition? What does it truly mean to find the center of the labyrinth, or perhaps to transcend its confines altogether? The answer, in the rich and encompassing vision of Carl Jung, lies in the lifelong, dynamic, and uniquely personal process he termed individuation. Individuation is not a destination to be arrived at, nor is it a state of static perfection or a final, blissful escape from the complexities of being human. Rather, Jung conceived of it as the psyche's innate and powerful drive towards wholeness, towards becoming an individual, that is, a separate, distinct, and indivisible unity. It is the courageous, often challenging journey of consciously integrating all aspects of our psyche, the conscious and the unconscious, the light and the shadow, our rational mind and our intuitive depths, our inner masculine and feminine energies, to become the unique, authentic, and fully realized individual we were inherently born to be. It is, quite simply, the art and discipline of becoming your true self, in its most complete and unadulterated expression. This process is not about achieving some kind of isolated, narcissistic self-absorption. cutting oneself off from the world. Paradoxically, Jung believed that it is only by becoming truly and authentically ourselves, by courageously differentiating from the unthinking herd mentality of the collective and the unconscious pull of societal norms, that we can then relate to others and to the world at large in a far more genuine, meaningful, compassionate, and ultimately more constructive way. An individuated person isn't an island, aloof and disconnected. They are, to use a different metaphor, a fully realized continent, with their own unique ecosystem, their own inner resources, their own defined shores, yet capable of profound and authentic connection with other continents, precisely because they are no longer defined by, or desperately dependent on, the fluctuating approval, the conditional acceptance, or the often conflicting expectations of others. Their relationships are based on truth, not on a persona-driven performance, on mutual respect for individual uniqueness, not on enmeshment or codependency. The individual who is committed to the path of individuation doesn't seek to eliminate the persona entirely. That would be impractical and socially unviable. Instead, they learn to wear their social masks more lightly, more consciously, more flexibly, as a functional tool for navigating the world, not as a rigid prison that confines their true self. They understand that the persona is a part of them, but not the totality of them. Similarly, they don't attempt to eradicate the shadow, for that would be a futile and self-mutilating endeavor. Instead, they courageously and consistently engage in the ongoing work of shadow integration. They learn to acknowledge its presence, to understand its messages, to reclaim its trapped energy, and to channel its raw power into creativity, assertiveness, boundary setting, and profound self-knowledge. The shadow, once a source of unconscious sabotage, becomes a wellspring of vitality and authenticity. They no longer merely project their anima or animus onto unsuspecting partners, leading to cycles of idealization and disillusionment. Instead, they cultivate a conscious, internal relationship with these contrasexual aspects of their psyche, embodying their balancing wisdom, their creative inspiration, and their guiding intuition within themselves. This leads to greater inner harmony and more mature, fulfilling relationships in the external world. Living an individuated life, especially in our modern world, this complex, often overwhelming labyrinth of illusions, with its cacophony of voices and its relentless pressures to conform, is perhaps the ultimate act of psychological and spiritual survival. It is not merely about physical survival, but about the survival and flourishing of your soul, your authenticity, your unique, unrepeatable spark. It is about choosing to live a life that is truly yours, not a second-hand imitation of someone else's ideal. This path, as Jung never tired of emphasizing, requires immense courage. It is not the path of least resistance. It demands the courage to consistently question the shoulds imposed by society, family, and even your own internalized critic. The courage to turn inwards and unflinchingly face your own darkness, your shadow, with honesty and self-compassion. The courage to listen to and trust your inner truth, your intuition even, and especially when it contradicts the prevailing opinions or expectations of the world around you. The courage to be different, to embrace your unique quirks and eccentricities, and to risk being misunderstood, criticized, or even temporarily rejected by those who are uncomfortable with your authenticity. The courage, at times, to walk alone for a while, to endure periods of sacred isolation as you differentiate from the collective and solidify your own inner ground. And ultimately, the profound courage to take full responsibility for creating your own meaning, for forging your own values, in a universe that offers no prepackaged, one-size-fits-all answers to life's deepest questions. This isn't about achieving some grand heroic destiny that will be celebrated in the annals of history, though for some, individuation might lead to extraordinary outer accomplishments. More often, the meaning an individuated person finds, the wholeness they cultivate, is expressed in the small, authentic, conscious choices they make every single day. It's in the integrity and passion they bring to their work, whether that work is recognized by the world or known only to themselves. It's in the quality of their presence in their relationships, their ability to listen deeply, to speak truthfully, to love authentically, and to respect the separateness of the other. It's in the way they meet their own suffering, and the suffering of the world, not with naive denial or bitter cynicism, but with consciousness, compassion, and a resilient spirit. It's in the way they express their unique gifts, their particular way of seeing and being, however humble or unconventional that expression might seem to the dominant. The labyrinth of the self, therefore, has no single final exit in the conventional sense. We don't solve it and then live happily ever after in some static paradise. Rather, individuation is about learning to live consciously, creatively, and meaningfully, with the ongoing complexities of the labyrinth that is human existence. It's about learning to recognize its recurring patterns, to find its hidden springs of wisdom and renewal, to transform its perceived monsters into unexpected allies and guides, and to chart your own unique, ever-evolving path through its inevitable twists and turns, guided always by the unwavering, though often quiet light of your true self. It is a journey that, in truth, never truly ends as long as we are alive. It is a process of continual unfolding, of becoming more and more of who we are capable of being. But it is a journey that imbues every step, every challenge faced, every insight gained, every moment of quiet connection with our own soul, with a profound and unshakable significance. It is the art, the discipline, and the ultimate privilege of living a life that is not just passively survived or reactively endured, but deeply, authentically, courageously, and meaningfully lived. The path that Carl Jung so brilliantly illuminated is certainly not for the faint of heart, nor for those seeking easy answers or a life devoid of struggle. But its rewards, he would argue, are immeasurable. A life lived with profound integrity, a resilient and adaptable psyche, a deep and abiding connection to your own soul, and through that intimate connection, a sense of participation in the very mystery and majesty of existence itself. So, as we stand at the threshold of this understanding, the ultimate question isn't whether you can navigate this inner labyrinth, for the capacity for individuation, Jung believed, is inherent in every human being. The true question is, will you choose to? Will you dare to consciously and consistently engage with the illusions of your persona, to courageously befriend and integrate your shadow, to patiently listen to the subtle guidance of your unconscious, and to embark on the extraordinary, lifelong adventure of becoming who you truly, authentically, and uniquely are? What is one illusion about yourself or about how life should be that you are ready, perhaps today, to start questioning, to begin ABULLAITTNG? What is one small, authentic choice, however seemingly insignificant, that you can make this week to honor the quiet whisper of your true self, even if it feels a little unfamiliar, a little uncomfortable, a little scary? This journey, your unique labyrinth of the self, awaits, and the golden thread of your own authentic being is already in your hand. All that is required is the courage to take the next step.